The thing that I find fascinating about Shakespeare is these little quotes encompass so much. I don't even understand it at first, but only when you dive deep into that little quote, it's so relevant. You know, it's been relevant down the years, however many centuries.
We asked people linked to Birmingham and to the West Midlands to respond to 3 Shakespeare quotes. Each quote was taken out of context. We asked them to tell us what it meant to them. Here is how people responded to our 3rd quote and the question, what would you do if you were not afraid?
Our doubts are traitors, and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt. I think Shakespeare is touching on something we now know as imposter syndrome. It's so easy to let self-doubt overwhelm you and even make you stop doing the things that you love or are really passionate about. I sometimes find myself not even trying because I'm scared of the outcome. But when we don't even try, we don't even give ourselves the ability to win. And even if we don't win, nothing really is a loss because a loss is a lesson. If I weren't afraid, I would write whatever I wanted and create fearlessly. And I hope I can do that.
I do relate to this quote. When I'm working creatively, I often find myself imagining what the perfect version of my work looks like far before I complete it. Naturally, as the creative process goes, the work will not look like that on the first attempt. It never does. But that desire to get it right the first time means that it's easy to overthink the process, to plan heavily in the hope that I won't make errors and get frustrated, instead of simply getting it done and correcting it later. If I were not afraid, I would let myself make mistakes more often and have the confidence that I'll do better on the next attempt.
To me, this quote is about that little voice in your head that makes you second guess yourself or says to you, do you really think people want to hear that? Surely it's not going to be useful. I'm sure people don't want to hear what you have to say. It second guesses what people think of you before you've even done anything, meaning that you would lose a lot of the good that I think voices would give to those situations simply because it lacks confidence. So yes, if I wasn't afraid, I'd probably ignore that voice a little bit more. I think there's a place for tempering yourself and checking in with yourself, but if you listen to that voice too often, then it becomes dangerous, and it means that you don't contribute to those spaces where your voice is worthy and your voice should be heard, whether that's in a classroom or a seminar or in a meeting or with your group of friends. So yeah, if I wasn't afraid, I'd have confidence in my voice and in what I had to say.
It's this self-doubt. It's the second guessing that maybe messes things up for us, or maybe makes us not do something that we would have done, or makes us go a certain direction that may not be as fruitful for us as another, because we're so worried about what somebody else might think or what somebody else might say, or what my friends are doing or what my colleagues are doing. And I think that's corrosive. I think it's truly dangerous for you to get caught in that mind frame, because again, you're giving away control of your own life. Don't do that. It's your life.
I think this quote speaks to a very fundamental human truth, which is that we hold back a lot, be that through lacking confidence or through fear of repercussions. And it's such a shame, because then we miss out on so much incredible stuff that people are capable of, and it would be lovely to see more of that in the world. If I wasn't afraid, then I'd be myself more. I wouldn't have that worry about being judged. And I think it's such an empowering thing we can tell people, to not just say it's okay to be you, but to go further and to tell people it's good to be you. You matter, and you are great as you are.
There's a punitive voice in everybody, I think, at some point in their lives, that is always niggling away at you, telling you that no, you can't do it. Or there might not be a voice, but there might be people who stop you from reaching your full potential.
Yeah, it's just like, even though you can't see doubts or fears, they control you, don't they? And stop you from moving forward.
I like this one. I like any quote which kind of compartmentalizes my brain, and it makes me think about my doubts as something external from the good stuff that's going on. And if I can attack those doubts as traitors, I'm in a good position. If I didn't have any fear, I think I would have conversations with strangers more. And I also think that I would have the guts to end conversations when things aren't going my way.
Yeah, they are traitors, and I often think that of like inside your own head, because it all sounds the same. Like your anxiety and your intuition often, I think, sometimes have the same voice, and you have to then go, no, that one was wrong, and it's a traitor living in here. I'm very afraid that anything might be the last time. So if I wasn't afraid, I think I would just enjoy it without trying to make sure that there's a next time to everything. I would just enjoy it as it is.
It really says go for it, don't listen to those doubts. Those doubts are there, but they will hold you back, and everything, all the best things are terrifying, and all the best things are achieved by taking risks. And if we listen to those doubts, they cannot stop you achieving those things, I guess is what that quote means to me.
It is so easy to doubt everything in the modern world. Nothing seems concrete or set, everything is changing and unstable, and it can sometimes be worrying to make a final decision. To me, this quote speaks to the idea that the only losers in life are those who do not try, those who fear to attempt something, whether this be to set up a business or to propose to a partner, or to enroll at a university. And we shouldn't diminish or discredit that fear. It's worth recognizing, because some actions or choices are scary. But I think it's in recognizing that fear that we may make our best choices and tackle things head on.
Now, as someone who suffers from anxiety, this quote resonates a lot with me. Sometimes I think about all of the things that could have come to fruition just if fear wasn't holding the individual back. Sometimes you have to just take a leap, take a plunge, and try something as if it's the first time you've ever done it. You have no preconceptions, you have no doubts, you're not fortune telling, you're just excited and courageous to see what happens. And I think sometimes when you take that leap, beautiful things can be created. Now, if I wasn't scared, I think I would return back to my writing, which I haven't done in years, for fear of thinking that I'm not a writer. And it's something that used to bring me joy. And I think if it brings you joy, why not pursue it?
I think in quite an anxious world, it's quite easy to let our doubts of what may or may not happen stop us from even trying in the first place. And no one has ever got anywhere without diving in, even if they're absolutely terrified. So we need to really focus and channel that fear into something far more positive and far more powerful, because if you don't feel fear, you're not really feeling anything. And it just means that you really, really believe and care for something. So just channeling that into a positive force, we might actually be able to drive some good. If I was not afraid of anything, the world would be my oyster. So it might be quite dangerous, but the world would absolutely be my oyster. And that is definitely something that you need to live by in order to get what you want out of life.
Remind me how short the life is. I don't know why, just like telling me, you got to stop that fear. You stop that inner voice is telling me, you can't, you're gonna fail, you can't do it. You just stop it. If I stop it, I'm really gonna be free. I'm really gonna grow wings and fly. I'm a big bird, like imagine myself like a big bird with rainbow wings, and you just holding these burdens and heavy weight in your legs. That's your fears. You're just keeping you down. from being an angel.
In this quote, I see the angel and the devil on each shoulder. The angel, your motivator, your reason to act, and the devil sat there convincing you that it's not a good idea and that you should be scared. I think it's interesting and helpful personally when I am scared of doing something. I think not what I'm scared of, but why I'm scared. And if I can challenge the reason, I can continue with the action.
I think this quote is very powerful and represents something that pretty much every single human goes through, maybe with the exception of Donald Trump, not naming names. Doubt is such a powerful and often useful thing. It's the backbone of science. If we weren't constantly doubting every single thing that we thought we discovered, we would never make new discoveries. But it's the fearing to attempt sort of caveat to that I think is so important. Doubt, when used constructively, is a beautiful, rational thing. But if you let it get in the way of ever trying, that's when it becomes completely destructive. And I think there's such a fine line between the two, which is really interesting. If I wasn't afraid, I would do so many things. Some of them probably quite stupid, but not all of them. I think I find it hard to pinpoint one thing, but because I think it would be lots of small, tiny things that maybe by themselves don't really mean a lot, but maybe added up might amount to something quite significant.
This quote reminds me of the self-talk we all have in our heads when we are in two minds about doing something, sometimes even to the point when the opportunity itself begins to evaporate. We know that the sooner we just get on with it, the better. Sometimes we have a small pep talk with ourselves. At other points, someone else will intervene and give us a nudge. This makes me think of a Leicester Tigers game where the kicker was dilly-dallying over a conversion, quite likely wasting time, but possibly nervous too. And as the ground joined in a collective, respectful hush, and the seconds continued to tick by, eventually someone piped up with a wonderfully Kenneth Williams-esque, "Oh, get on with it."
This made me think of the musical Hadestown and how doubt's a really big thing in that, where Orpheus, he's meant to walk away from Hades without turning round to see Eurydice, but doubt creeps in and that ruins his love for her. It also made me think of football, in that the impetuousness of youth, in that younger footballers like Erling Haaland or Kylian Mbappe, like they have no fear, no doubt for them because they're young. And so like, for me, the whole quote made me think about essentially like doubt can be useful and you need to, you know, acknowledge it when you're thinking of doing things, but often it's best to have those doubts, acknowledge them, and then move forward, because if we listen to our doubts all the time, we never do anything. So yeah, doubt needs to be tempered.
So when I read this quote, I think of another quote, which is, "We suffer more in our imaginations than in reality," which is definitely true for me, especially since becoming a mum, actually. I don't think I'm the only person who, after putting her to bed, particularly when she was a tiny baby, would lie in bed and just think about all the terrible things that could happen to her. And it was so hard. It was so painful. But it wasn't really happening. It was happening in my head, but it still really was, it was suffering. It was horrible. And if I could get rid of that for people, then I would. It definitely gets in the way. However, it's probably for survival. Your brain's telling you all these things that could happen to something that's precious to you so that you look after it. But you have to find balance in your life, because otherwise what's the point in living? If you let those thoughts govern your life, then you won't have fun, you won't take risks, and taking risks is really, really important. So I think we should all stop and reflect on that quote. I think the message of it is to be present, which is really hard, but I think it's really important.